All right, it's a great honor to be here with you here today. New Zealand is one of my favorite countries in the world, and so any chance I get, I love coming here. So we're a very backward-looking society. We're backward-looking because it's just human nature. See, we've all personally experienced the past. As we look around us, we see evidence of the past all around us. All information that we come into contact with is essentially history. So the past is very knowable, and yet we're going to be spending the rest of our lives in the future. So it's almost as if we're walking backwards into the future. As a futurist, my job is to help turn people around, to give them some idea of what the future might hold. So we're going to do that here today. But if you ask this question, how does the future get created? Well, the future gets created in the minds of everybody around us. We all participate in creating the future. Certainly some of us have more influence than others. But the people make decisions today based on their understanding of what the future holds. So I use this phrase quite a bit: the future creates the present. This is just the opposite of what most people think. Most people think what we're doing today is somehow going to create the future. But from a little different perspective, it's these images, these visions that we hold in our head determine our actions today. So here's the key thing. If we change somebody's vision of the future, we change the way they make decisions today. So that's my goal here today. My goal is to change your vision of the future, and as you walk out of here, you'll make different decisions as a result of that. So please hold my feet to the fire if I don't do that. Larry Page, the CEO of Google, says that the main reasons companies fail is because they miss the future. I happen to agree with that. I'm going to start off with this topic of atmospheric water harvesters. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this at all, but in the entire world, of all the water on the world, only 2% of it is fresh water. And for a variety of reasons, only 25% of that is accessible to humans. So the entire human race has survived up until this time with 1/2% of all the water in the world. Atmospheric water harvesters have the ability to change that. This is the ability to suck moisture out of the air wherever you're at, whenever you need it. This is an MIT project in Peru. This is called the Warka Water Towers in Africa. As a French designer came up with this. It gets roughly 100 liters a day, depending on the humidity, and it's changed the lives of a lot of young women in Africa. They've also taught them how to build these on their own, so a team of 4 people can build one in a week. Another French company, Eoli Water, has figured out how to use windmills to actually suck moisture out of the air. They're able to get somewhere around 500 liters a day, again, depending on the humidity. They're testing these out in Abu Dhabi right now. Edward Liniger, a young inventor, has figured out how to use a solar-powered system to suck moisture out of the air and irrigate all the plants nearby. Now, as all of this work was going on, the holy grail for this industry was to see who could actually create the self-filling water bottle, a water bottle that would just sit there and fill itself. And this company came up with it. This is still a prototype stage called Fontis, that they've developed one that works on a bicycle. As you're riding along, it sucks the moisture out of the air and fills up a water bottle. Now, if you're stranded on a life raft in the middle of the ocean, I mean, this can mean the difference between life and death. If you're in the middle of a desert, there's lots of situations where this can be very useful. Now, this is what I refer to as a catalytic innovation. This is different than disruptive innovation. Disruptive innovation is disrupting existing industries, constantly forcing people to do more with less. A catalytic innovation creates entire new industries. So examples in the past, the catalytic industries are electricity, automobiles, airplanes, telephones, photographs. Each of these went on to create a multi-billion-dollar industry. But here's the thing. All industries are a bell curve. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And yes, all industries will eventually end. Every industry we have here today, 1,000 years from now, will have gone away and gotten replaced with something else. And here's the other thing. Most industries today, the most profitable ones out there, happen to be in the second half of the bell curve. They're constantly being forced to do more with less. I'll give you this quick example here of one. It's peak steel. Projections are that we will run into the peak demand for steel in the world around 2024. That's when we develop synthetic materials and the overall demand for steel starts to decline. Now the peak employment is a lead indicator for this. The peak employment in the steel industry is actually in the 1980s. So in the US, we had 3 times as many people working in the steel industry as we do today. So the question you should ask is agriculture at the end of the bell curve, somewhere down here? Or are we at the beginning of a new bell curve? We're looking at a whole new industry that we're creating here. As my favorite physicist Max Planck likes to say, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Now, the Internet of Things is really interesting. We're kind of creating this software infrastructure over everything physical in the world. We're connecting things in ways that were never connected in the past. The Internet of Things is kind of at the forefront of this, but there's other things as well. To give you some background on the Internet of Things, it happened, it was kind of introduced to the world somewhere between 2008 and 2009. That's when the number of devices connected to the Internet started to exceed the number of people on Earth. We had 6.8 billion people on Earth at that time, 6.8 billion devices. Now the projections are we're going to hit 50 billion things connected to the Internet by 2020. And so you start asking, what are all these things? At the same time, there's this whole revolution going on in the sensor world. 2 years ago, Fairchild Semiconductor held an event in San Francisco called the Trillion Sensor Summit. And they were charged with putting together a roadmap as to how long it would be before we reached 1 trillion sensors in the world. And they concluded that we will reach 1 trillion sensors in the world around 2024, and that by 2036, we're going to reach 100 trillion sensors in the world. Now what this means is the sensors, and these things will sense everything from heat to light to barometric pressure to moisture. Sensors are going to become very tiny, very easy to mass produce, very inexpensive, and we'll start embedding them into coatings, into paints. We'll even start sewing sensors into the ground. We'll have information coming from everywhere. As a result, innovation's being parsed into far smaller pieces, so we can all participate in creating the future. We all have the ability to have our hand in creating a new future. This is an example of a graphene super sensor, 1,000 times more sensitive to light than anything on the market today. Robert Cringely, one of the tech writers, he makes this comparison. He says, a decade from now, computer vision will be seeing things we can't even imagine, like dogs sniffing cancer today. So this is, we're getting into this world of exponential change. Now when things become a digital product, they change much faster than the physical products where they came from. So as we're shifting from things like a digital phone, or from a physical phone to a digital phone, the changes start happening exponentially faster. So this is an interesting chart here that shows that it took 38 years to get 50 million users in radio, 13 years for TV, and we thought it was really fast when Twitter did it in 9 months, but then along came Angry Bird and did it in 35 days. And we are now at a point where it's conceivable for companies to go from 0 to 50 million customers in less than a week, maybe 2 or 3 days even. That's right around the corner. So we're transitioning from physical to digital, from physical cars to digital cars, from physical homes to smart homes, from physical cities to smart cities, and from physical farms to smart farms. So Kevin Kelly invented this term, the quantified self. Kevin Kelly is one of the founders of Wired magazine. Now what the quantified self means is that we have the ability now to very accurately measure all the inputs and outputs of the human body. I have the ability to very accurately measure the air that I'm breathing, the quality of the water that I'm drinking, and also the chemical composition of sweat on my arm. And we do it with various sensors that we can apply to the body. Lots of information coming and going from these type of sensors. And we're able to monitor our health and our performance as a result of all this. And then along came this 3D printer called the BioBot, which is now available for under $10,000. And this enables us to print with human tissue. So we're actually able to 3D print skin, as an example. This is skin for burn victims. And once we're able to actually print sensors into the skin, and you start thinking about that, well, we could actually print an extra layer of skin for our body, and we can give ourselves like rhino skin, and we can then have all this information coming to us. Now, food in the future then transitions from being kind of a fad-based thing. You know, I wanted to get on this because my friends are on this diet, to more of a science-based things, because we can accurately measure what effect this food's going to have on us. So as an example, this is one called the Biometric coffee maker. You get up in the morning, you put your hand on it, it knows exactly how much caffeine you're going to need for that day. We think it probably needs a Jack Daniel's switch on it too, but this is some smart chopsticks that were invented by the Chinese search engine Baidu. They can actually tell whether or not the food you're eating is safe to eat. The only bad thing is you have to know how to use chopsticks. But so in the future with augmented reality, we're able to actually see lots of information coming from the food that we're about to eat. This plate full of food I have here, I know how much I weigh now and how much I'm going to weigh after I eat this. This is kind of a quick video to show what augmented reality is going to do in the future, give us access to so much more information. And this is a foreign video, so you probably can't read what's going on there, but it says that it's below standard, so he then indicates that to a friend. This is a virtual reality set for chickens. This was proposed as an idea so that chickens living in cages can feel like they're free-range chickens even though they're confined to a cage. Seems like a good idea. Restaurants in the future, when you walk in there, and I always talk about moodcasters that we'll all have, they will know who you are and what your diet restrictions are, and so then they will present you with an electronic menu that just lists the items that are available for you to eat. This creates a hyper-individualized food selection. So people are going to be figuring out their life around a lot of the food because it affects their performance, affects how they sleep, how they live their lives. And as our understanding of the food health relationships gets more defined, the demand for food diversity is going to increase exponentially. So if we think we have lots of selection in the stores right now, it's going to go totally crazy. We're going to have lots of niche products out there. That creates lots of opportunities and it shifts markets dramatically. Now, this is a picture of me at the Consumer Electronics Show in January. The first booth that I went to, they sat me down and I had my ears scanned. And then they proceeded to take that image of the scanning of my ears and 3D print earbuds for me. Now, these don't look like much, but these earbuds are the most comfortable earbuds I've ever owned. I can sleep with them on airplanes, and and I think about how few things we actually have that are designed specifically for us. 2.5 weeks ago, I was in South Korea, and I was stepped into this booth here, and they had me pose, and with one click, they flashed 100 cameras, made a high-resolution image of me, and then they proceeded to 3D print a little statue of me about that high. And so we are quickly shifting from taking selfies to doing shapies. The 3D printing world was started by this guy, Charles Hull, back in the early 1980s. And we started with just printing in a few materials, and now that has started to mushroom. And these are some of the new ones. We can actually print with wood fiber, create wood products, macadamia nut shells, and instant tea. I don't know why we're doing that, but actually Carnegie Mellon and Disney has figured out how to 3D print with wool. So they're actually able to 3D print wool teddy bears with just instantly. Imagine going to shop for clothing a few years from now. The first thing you do is you step into a body scanner. Scans your entire body, and then you then decide what kind of fashion, styles, colors you're interested in, and they will 3D print this for you as you're waiting. Now these are 3D printed clothing. Lots of different options out there, and it's very sophisticated clothes that you can't make with needles and thread. This gives you a quick example of some 3D printed fashions. This is a fashion show that a young Israeli fashion designer put together.
Just imagine the potential. If you're called print your own jacket.
It's not exactly designed to keep you warm, but and it's not just our clothing, it's also our shoes. I don't know anybody that doesn't have problems with their feet, but having your feet scanned in and get something that fits perfect right when you put it on, that's pretty incredible. A different form of 3D printing is contour crafting. This is actually printing with concrete. And they're printing one layer upon another layer upon another layer. And there's been a lot of effort going into this recently. And what they're actually printing here is a castle. And so this Chinese company, Winsun, has actually managed to start printing houses rapidly. They put together 10 houses in a single day for prices of under $5,000 each. So, and then a few months ago, then they announced this huge mansion that they were able to 3D print, and also this 4-story building. This is an amazing accomplishment because it changes the way we think about our homes in the future. So this is kind of the idea of 3D printing a house. And so in the future, if you get tired of your house, you can just grind it up and reprint it. And also, when you're printing, it's not just printing the walls, we're also printing the wiring in the walls, the plumbing in the walls, the toilets in the bathrooms, the sinks and the cabinets in the kitchen. If you think this doesn't affect agriculture, this is hempcrete. Lots of the material that we're going to be using in the future will be grown. Once we have the ability to print houses, we no longer have the need for flat walls. Every wall can become an artistic centerpiece. Architects are going to have a heyday with this because we can create free-form structures unlike anything ever in the past. And our very definition of what an office looks like, what a house looks like, a condo, all of these things will start to change in the future. And then we get into 3D food printing. 3D food printing is going off in lots of different directions. NASA-sponsored 3D food printer competition for pizzas, because they can't get pizzas on Mars for some reason. This is 3D printed hamburgers, 3D printed chickpea snacks, 3D printed raviolis, corn chips, sugar cubes. At Consumer Electronics Show, they were scanning people's faces in and printing them in chocolate. For some reason, people love to eat their face in chocolate. I don't know why. This is a living biscuit. You print this out and set it on a shelf for a few days and then it grows. So if you can imagine, all of the apples that fall off of an apple tree will tend to be bruised and beaten up. A lot of them go to waste. But if you could take that same apple stock and 3D print a perfect apple every time, not only is it a perfect apple, you can also eat the stem and the core and the leaf, because it's all made out of the same material. Only you happen to like almond flavoring, or you need extra vitamin D, or on Wednesdays you like blue apples. You can do all that. So would you buy a product if it said it was naturally grown, completely organic, printed food? Now there's been a lot of effort going into this idea of vertical farming. Vertical farming, contrary to what some of these architects are talking about, farming is not done with the most expensive real estate in town. It has to be done cheaply. And so we've been projecting that we're going to develop systems for creating vertical greenhouses, either in silos above the ground or in holes that we dig in the ground. And we'll be able to kind of create this robotic arm on a shaft that goes up and down and does most of the maintenance of this farm. And this idea of underground farming is going to open the doors for lots of opportunity. We did some rough calculations, and this type of underground farming has the potential to increase the abilities of the Earth's ability to produce food 1,000-fold. If you think that's really far out there, this is a video from a company called Plant Lab. And what they're doing is in sunless, rainless rooms, and they're able to actually grow things underground. And this is robotic plant beds, and they were able to, most of the work is still done manually here. And the key thing is they're doing this right underneath the grocery store. How cool is that? Is that our future? So the future is ours to write. I'll leave you with a few predictions here. Our most valuable land in the future is going to be our landfills. That's where all the raw materials are. We've thrown it all away. So what we're going to be doing in the future is creating these robotic earthworms that go through and mine it all out, and then we can feed it into 3D printers and make things with it. Driverless cars are going to change, driverless vehicles are going to change farming as dramatically as the invention of the tractor itself. Lots of autonomous vehicles being played with for the farming world right now. By 2030, the average person will have friends that are not connected to traditional water lines. We'll interact with over 10,000 sensors on a daily basis, and we'll own a coffee maker that's smarter than they are. By 2030, the average person will own printed clothing, live in a printed house, have packages delivered by drones, own more than one robot, frequently use driverless cars, and will be capable of accomplishing 10 times what the average person today can. We're entering a period of unprecedented opportunity. So why is this so important? Humanity is going to change more in the next 20 years than in all human history. At the same time, risk factors are going up. They're going to increase exponentially. And our children's children who haven't even been born yet are counting on you, the people in this room, to make all the right decisions. As Steve Jobs says, right now is one of those moments when you are influencing the future. But sometimes our best efforts just look a lot like this. Yeah, pretty much just like that. So as Thomas Edison says, opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. Isn't that the truth? So if you need more information about what we do at the Da Vinci Institute, feel free to sign up for our free newsletter. But I thank you very much for having me here today. Thank you.